Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are dialing in from. We're going to dive into this session shortly. Just going to give it another 60 seconds or so to make sure that everybody that is attending has time to get in and get settled and get comfortable before we get started. I guess in the meantime, it'd be great for those of you that are already registered and already in. Please put in the chat box where you're located. It's always fun to see who we've got and what corners of the globe that you're dialing in from. Myself, I'm sat here in the UK. We also have my colleague Richard on the call, who's sat at our head office in Stockholm. There he is. He says hi on the chat. Singapore, Hamburg, Manchester, USA, Kimberly. Early morning for you, Kimberly. Thank you for joining us. Wow, Kingston in Jamaica. I can guarantee your weather is much better than ours here today. It's miserable here in the UK. Just give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we will dive in. España. Hello, Sharon in Cumbria. Okay, let's have some fun with this. Let's put what's the temperature in your local reading, whether it's Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius, where you're sat today. I think it's about 7 or 8 degrees here in the UK. Wow, Richie, minus 11. Cool. 21 degrees for Michael. Okay, I think we've given everybody time to get settled. I know we've got more people still joining, but we'll dive in. And I think I'd like to start by, first of all, please let me introduce myself. My name's Steve Middleton. I'm the UK Growth Director and self-proclaimed SRM expert. It's an absolute pleasure to be hosting today's session. A little bit of housekeeping. First of all, we want to make sure that today's session is as most value to each and every one of you. So please use this chat box to ask your questions. I've got my colleague Richard online with me. You may hear from Richard, particularly if I'm sharing the wrong slide or if there's a problem. But Richard will be responding to your questions, but also highlighting the questions that he feels will be most valuable for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. There will also be a little bit of audience participation, not too much, don't worry, but there will be a single poll that will be asking quite early on in the session. So please be ready just to provide your answer. It's super helpful for us to understand where you guys are and where the content for our next session should drive. But also, we're conscious we're going to deliver an awful lot today in a very short period of time. So if you'd like to book in a separate session, whether that's with me or one of the team here, or if you've got any questions, you want a one-on-one conversation, then feel free to click on the link that Richard will share on the screen throughout the presentation, where you can book calls directly with us and the team. Okay, so let's dive into the presentation. So first of all, let me introduce Kodiak. For those of you that don't know, at Kodiak, we are a dedicated supplier relationship management suite. Proud to be serving world-class procurement teams in the 4 corners of the globe, as represented with those that have joined today's session. Our solution helps them to make sense of supplier information, supplier data, which is often static or in most cases scattered, to make sense of that data and turn it into intelligence that drives real-time actionable insights and drives impact throughout the organizations. And my goal today is super simple. I want to give each and every one of you the key to unlocking world-class procurement teams and show you how having a dedicated SRM platform in the heart of your procurement ecosystem will help you to drive performance, value, and at scale and speed throughout your businesses. So with that said, when I talk about speed, let me just move my slides over, bear with me. When we talk about speed, I think it's important to know and understand that speed is built, not wished for. So I'm going to start today's presentation with a very short video. And I will warn you, this is very, very short, but I think it perfectly demonstrates what performance and speed should look like. Okay, I did warn you, it's a very short video. Well, what we've just witnessed there is a Formula One team, in particular the Red Bull team, back in 2019, setting what was at the time a brand new world record, changing 4 tires in just 1.82 seconds. I think everybody on this call will agree, incredibly impressive. However, Formula One teams weren't always this efficient. So let's now take a look of what a pit stop used to look like back in the 1950s.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lumore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch.
All right. Don't worry. I'm not going to make you sit through the entire thing, and you'll have to take my word for it when I say that this took a whole minute and 7 seconds. And in that minute and 7 seconds, in fact, all they were able to do was change just the front 2 tires. So clearly a lot has changed since the 1950s through to today. So what are those changes? Well, I think it's down to 2 things. First of all, technology. New technology driving better performance, but also orchestration. If you look at this video of the Red Bull team, you can see here no less than 16 people, all collectively striving to achieve the same goal, understanding the critical importance of their role in doing so. Now think about this in the context of your procurement teams. Do you really have the most pioneering technology in your business? And when I say pioneering, I do not mean the latest version of Excel. The world has moved on, okay? But also, can you honestly say that as a team across departments and across the organization, you're all collectively striving to achieve those common goals, working as one, understanding the critical importance of each other's roles? So as we can see, Formula One teams have clearly moved on. Yet in many cases, and we see this all the time when we're talking to new businesses, in procurement, we are trapped, still acting like we're in the 1950s. So what's holding procurement back? And this is particularly important because, like Formula One, the world has changed. You know, procurement is no longer just the traditional role of cost reduction and risk management. It's so much more than that. There are new responsibilities that we have to take care of. There's a need for a greater level of transparency, greater level of resilience. I mean, we're living in a world where there are more disasters and more disruption than we've ever had in our lifetimes. And I don't see that changing. But also the need to innovate and drive greater impact within the organization. Innovate because we want to remain that competitive advantage against our competitors. But also we have a responsibility around climate and sustainability that falls on us within procurement. So we can all agree there is a need to do a lot more with less and faster. And this particular slide here demonstrates it. Our responsibilities, our workload are increasing, yet our teams, our budgets are largely staying the same, maybe increasing a small amount, but in a lot of cases, actually being reduced throughout 2026. And yet I find it staggering to hear that 72% of procurement teams are still managing suppliers using Excel or homegrown solutions. Well, I'm sorry, Excel was never created to manage this level of moving data. And also, I know the size of our development team here at Kodiak and how hard they work to make sure that we remain the most pioneering solution in our space. So unless you have a team dedicated to SRM, I also know that homegrown solutions will not just struggle, but they will fail. And I've seen it time and time before. So this, for us, this statistic that 72% of organizations and procurement teams are still out there managing suppliers using countless out-of-date, inaccurate Excel spreadsheets is crazy. And we're on a mission to change that. So we've set the scene. I want to pause now just for a second, just to ask this quick poll. Where are you in your journey of SRM and SRM technology? Is it a level of awareness? So gaining understanding of what SRM is and what it's all about? Are you in that process of education where you're looking to build momentum internally, or selection? Do you actually know that you need an SRM? The business case has been written. Now you're just in that process of choosing the right solution for you and your business. I'll give you, again, just a few minutes just to take a read through those and make sure you select the answer that's most relevant to you and your current situation. It's really interesting, quite an even spread. Richie, you have to let me know when everybody's voted. I can't see how many votes have come in. You let me know when you're happy that we move on from this stage, or do we hold them here for as long as we need to? Okay, we'll move on. All right. So what's the key to unlocking world-class procurement teams? Well, first of all, I think it's a change in mindset. First of all, we need to move from being reactive to being much more proactive. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, many of the companies that I meet for the first time, they're trapped in what we call operational chaos. They're moving data around. They're constantly looking at inaccuracies. There are gaps. They're waiting for information to come through from different departments. And their time is sucked up in that kind of bottom line operational risk management role, which means you have very little or no time to be strategic, to be growth focused, to be having those top line, really important conversations, negotiations, and decision making that you want to make regarding your suppliers. So I guess part of that is looking at technology. So going back to that Formula One team, yes, it's about orchestration, but it's also what technologies do you need? An SRM is one of those tools that's going to help you to drive that bottom line, keep you out of that operational chaos. So what is SRM? Well, I'd like to introduce you all to the SRM pyramid. Now, some of you may have seen me deliver these presentations before or met before, and I've talked a lot around the SRM pyramid. And I guess before we dive into this, I think, and I might be slightly biased when I say this, I believe SRM is critical to every organization, large or small. So for those of you that are on this call that already have SRM, then I hope that today is educational in terms of making sure that you get the very most out of that platform and what's possible with SRM. For those of you that are new to SRM, well, my goal is to open up your eyes to potentially a whole new world of what's possible. So SRM, as you can see on your screen here, is broken down into three critical elements: operational, tactical, and strategic SRM. I'm going to start today to focus on operational and tactical SRM, because this is the foundation for everything you want to deliver when you get into strategic SRM. So when we talk about operational SRM, first of all, this is about making sure you've got all your supplier information in one place. Not only that, but you have it with a level of accuracy, and it's also talking and it's orchestrating that data across your tech stack. The second thing is you want to make sure that you've got a really efficient supplier discovery and onboarding process. That's your operational. Make sure you got all the data in one place. But then you can go into tactical. And this is where the SRM, this is where smart SRM kicks in. It starts to make sense of that data, turn that data into intelligence. So we actually start to know and understand more about our suppliers. But it's also about making sure you've got a really robust risk, compliance, and qualification process in place. So let's just expand on this a little bit. I love this statement shared by our founder, where she states, procurement is drowning in information, but remains starved for knowledge. So just think about that for a moment, and particularly within your environment and the teams that you're working with. Procurement is drowning in information. Think about the data you've got stored within your existing tech stack, maybe your ERP solution, whatever you might have today. Think about all the information you're capturing directly from your suppliers, but also that feedback, that critical feedback you're getting from internal stakeholders. Maybe you've got third-party risk tools, financial, media, whatever it might be, all pumping into various Excel spreadsheets and documents and share files across the organization. So you've got a lot of information there, but actually, how much do you truly understand? What do you actually know about your suppliers? And that's the difference between Excel, homegrown solutions, and that of a really robust SRM solution. We turn that data from being scattered into, and we harness it and we turn it into intelligence. And to give you an understanding of what a typical architecture can look like within SRM. Now, I can't talk for every SRM solution that's out there. And please go and have a look for those of you that are in that kind of education. Go and have a look what's available, because there are lots of different tools out there. But I can talk for Kodiak. And this is the kind of architecture we can typically expect. We expect that there will be integrations with your existing tech stack, sharing information back and forth, helping you create that single source of truth. Everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet. We're going to help you to interact and capture data directly from your suppliers and collaborate with your suppliers in a more effective and efficient manner. We're going to make sure any third-party tools that you're using today, which is capturing really important information, which is driving those strategic decisions for you, is being captured, stored, and visualized within the SRM. Because the importance of this is once we've captured it, as I've said a couple of times, we can then put your data to work. That's when we can start to turn that data into real intelligence. And imagine a world for a moment. Imagine a world where every one of your suppliers has a scorecard that looks something like this. They have the ability to register themselves. You have the ability to capture third-party risk data directly into the platform. We've got metrics across the top covering the operational and sustainability ratings, as well as the performance ratings, all of which are driving just one number across the top of your scorecard. So we can very quickly give you an understanding of what good and bad looks like across your supply chain. And that becomes really important when you start to look at how you're selecting suppliers. Then you look at your supplier information, everything from a basic email address to contact numbers and contact names are plenty across the various suppliers that you have, down to spend data or spend categorization. This is completely up to you, but all your supplier information in one place. Imagine thinking about every assessment, every audit, every evaluation that's ever carried out, which is relevant to that supplier, automatically tracked, traced, stored in one place, driving those metrics at the top of the page, but also down to documentation. This could be a code of conduct, could be a certification, it could be a contract, an NDA, a service level agreement. Again, automatically tracked, saved, stored within that scorecard. But not only that, maybe you apply one of our AI agents, which is going to scan that document to make sure it is the right document for the right supplier. It's got the correct expiry date. But we're pulling out particular contract clauses, something that's reportable. Maybe we're pulling out service level agreements or KPIs, which are driving your performance statistics. Again, directly from that document, so it becomes something which is more managed. And imagine every conversation, every negotiation, every action, every task, every request, every workflow, every approval process, which is relevant to that supplier, again, is recorded, tracked, and traced within that scorecard, providing complete transparency for everybody involved in that particular situation, so they can see exactly what stage that supplier's at, or again, to orchestrate that team, tell them exactly what's missing and what tasks they have to complete when and where, and so much more. I know we're covering a lot in a very short period of time, and I apologize for the speed, but again, I want to cover a lot with you today. But what we've covered off there is that operational and tactical SRM. We're making sure we've got all the information relevant to your suppliers in one place. We're making sure you've got a really robust risk, compliance, and qualification process. We're making sure you can onboard, speak to, evaluate your suppliers continuously across their life cycle. But most importantly, we're taking all of that data and we're making sense of it. And now we've done that, now we can start to look at strategic SRM. This is where we can look specifically towards performance, but also how you're collaborating with those suppliers. And let's just have a look at that for a moment. Let's start off with supplier performance management. And I want to start with this statement by Peter Drucker. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. What you can measure, you can improve. What you can measure continuously, you can improve exponentially. Remember the Formula One team. Remember in the 1950s when it took 1 minute and 7 seconds to change just 2 tires? And then in 2019, it's now 1.82 seconds to change 4 tires. And by the way, I believe the McLaren team have since beaten this. I think it's now a flat 1.8 seconds. Maybe somebody else can correct me in the comments. But the importance here is that they're continuously measuring the inputs and the outputs to make sure they're driving improvements. And when we're talking about driving performance, it's important to look at both hard and soft data, particularly when it's relevant to your suppliers. So it's not just plugging in your ERP and pulling that data across in reports on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. Of course, we can do that, and that's important. But it's also about combining that with some of the soft facts as well. Data that's coming in directly from those stakeholders that are giving you that critical feedback, experience feedback they're getting from working directly with that supplier. Maybe actually it's supplier feedback that's helping you understand how you can improve things or collectively improve things around performance. But the important thing here is that, yes, everything's getting measured, but this is now going to drive a different type of conversation that you need to have, particularly with your critical and strategic suppliers. Because this is where you can now go into collaboration and innovation. And I just first want to show you this, because often people forget this. Suppliers are critical to your success. So please treat your suppliers as friends, not food. But also, when we talk about internal collaboration, think about, again, that Formula One team. Everybody collectively striving to achieve the same thing. You want to be driven like a well-oiled machine. Make sure that internally, both within your teams and collectively across the organization, everybody's working as one to achieve those common goals. This is where things start to fall down if that isn't true. And again, SRM is that catalyst to help you have the real great conversations with your suppliers, but also to drive that orchestration with your team. But some of you will be sat there thinking, well, this is great, Steve, but I've got 150,000 suppliers across 90 different countries in various different categories. How is it possible that I'm going to have this level of collaboration, not just internally, but actually with my suppliers? And you're absolutely right. This is where SRM again comes in. The first thing you want to do is identify the best performing suppliers, that fit your strategic goals. Now, this is critical. So this is what helps you to select and categorize your suppliers and then determine which ones you want to invest the majority of your time in. Once you've done that, rather than thinking, right, they're my supplier of choice, change the focus. Turn that focus to you becoming their customer of choice. Because I promise you a couple of things will then start to happen. First of all, if there is a problem or a challenge related to the product and service that they're offering you, you will be the first to know, which might mean there's about to be a stock shortage or there isn't enough time to give a certain project, so you will be given first allocation. But also, if there is an opportunity, maybe they tell you first, so you then suddenly become the innovators. That's when you have a truly collaborative relationship with your suppliers, and that's when you win and grow together. So there we have it. Back in the SRM pyramid, again, we've covered off the operation stuff about capturing all your data, make sure it's in one place. We've talked about the tactical stuff about making sense of that data. We've now talked about the strategic stuff, so some of the actions you will be taking in response to that information. But now let's look at the impact of that, because this is what it's all about. And if we break it down across those three key areas, from operational, tactical to strategic ROI, operationally, we see greater agility. One example, 80% faster supplier onboarding. Now, that might be really important when you're working on a new project, so it saves delays. But also, that's faster agility across the entire life cycle of that supplier. Tactical ROI, because you're having more data-driven conversations based around their performance or how they're operating as an organization, you're going to be making typically 5 to 10% annual savings. And in a world where complexities are afoot and competitors are stronger, you want to make sure that you are the best footing around being competitive. And I think, again, when we talk about those savings, it could be operational savings between you and the supplier that you could then pass on to the customer. So it's not just about hammering a reduction from your supplier, it's about working in partnership. And strategic ROI, well, this one's easy. Because you're working more collaborative with your suppliers, you're bringing new products to market quicker, sooner, faster, more efficiently, more effective. Therefore, that gives you the competitive advantage. And we see 30% increase in supplier-led innovation when working with SRM platforms. For each of these, by the way, we have case studies on our website that Richard can share with you or that we can share after the webinar. But yeah, again, each of these statistics have been pulled directly from those case studies from real customers. And for an example of that, here's a couple of our customers. I mean, look at this. You've got Alpha talking about improved negotiation power because it's backed by data. And then you've got Hubner here, say, where they've streamlined, standardized supplier onboarding and assessments. Super, super valuable. So how do you unlock a world-class procurement team? Well, first of all, what technology? Let's make sure we've got the latest, most advanced, most pioneering solutions in terms of technology in place. And again, that does not mean the latest version of Excel. We've got to look beyond that now. And secondly, let's make sure that we are working collectively as a team, like this Red Bull team are. 16 people collectively striving to achieve the same goal, delivering world-class performance. Let's make sure whether you're a team of 5, 50 or 5,000, that you're delivering world-class performance. So SRM is the key to unlocking world-class procurement teams because speed is built, not wished for. Thank you. I know that was a lot in a very short period of time. So the presentation's now finished, but Richard, I don't know whether you can still hear me, but I guess now's the time to go into questions. So if any of you have any questions that you'd like to pose that we can respond to or ask, I'd welcome whatever questions you've got. Okay, great question. How about RFXs and e-auction functionalities? Well, again, look, there's limitations in all platforms. RFX you can typically run through SRM solutions. That's part of the sourcing element of platforms. I would say e-auctions is typically something which is a bit more specialist, and that you'll be looking for a tool to drive that. But yeah, RFXs is something that I would say will be covered with, again, to various degrees within different SRM solutions. Why 80% faster onboarding? Thank you, Kevin. Again, I can't remember which case study this was taken out of, but I know there's a number of examples within our platform where we've talked about not just faster onboarding, but just more efficient processes internally. And ultimately, the biggest difference here is how you're capturing the data from your supplier, how you're capturing third-party risk information about that supplier. And because our platform automates everything from your side, first of all, it tends to drive the process much quicker. The platform will do the evaluations for you, which means that it speeds up the actual decision-making that you need to make. And if there are any problems highlighted through that evaluation process, it won't just highlight it, but the platform will tell you in most cases exactly what you need to do and how you need to deal with that to get the clarity before you actually onboard or approve that supplier. I think the second thing as well, and the piece that we are so incredibly focused on when it comes to user experience, is we also look at that from the supplier's perspective. There are lots of platforms out there that as soon as you start reaching out to a supplier and you ask them for information, the first thing they'll be asked is what's their username and password. Well, I can tell you that will stop 70% of people that are requesting that information to go away and do something else immediately. And for the 30% that do log in, they sometimes even have to pay in order to provide information. I had that example today on a call where they just had to pay £250 in order to provide information that was of value to the supplier that they were registering with. Crazy. So again, with Kodiak, the route for them to answer, it will be a simple email with a link which they click, they're straight in, they provide the information, it shoots back, it drives everything. It keeps it super clean, super easy. So that's why we're able to drive faster onboarding. In this example, 80%, but in a lot of cases, it's 50% plus. Okay, how does SRM help when at that stage they aren't being SRM'd? Do you mean faster onboarding for new projects with existing suppliers? Again, I think it's the same thing across. If I understand your question correct here, Kevin, I think a couple of things. If you need to get information from your suppliers, you need to make that as simple and as easy as possible. You need to look at the way you're asking the questions. Let me give you another real example. We recently won a customer. I won't tell you who they are because it wouldn't be fair to do so. But obviously, it's quite ironic, but we had to go through their existing onboarding process. So they then email me all their different forms, from Excel forms, Word forms, PDFs that I have to complete. I think I entered the words Kodiak Hub about 14 times across all of those different forms. Those duplications. But most importantly, and as a SaaS business, there are a lot of questions in there that were just completely irrelevant. So again, how are we getting it faster? We're able to, first of all, make that experience much better. If the data already exists in the SRM, I'm not going to ask your supplier to retype it in and provide it again. So they're only providing data once. Secondly, based on their industry or how they respond to a question will determine what the next questions are. So to give you an example, maybe you're asking questions around their info security. You ask, do they have an ISO 27001? If their answer is yes, you simply go, please upload and provide an expiry date, and you move on. If the answer is no, it doesn't mean they're not compliant, they just don't have the certification. So we then open up additional questions relevant to that 27001 InfoSec requirement. So again, that's another example. But that's not just onboarding, that's ongoing evaluations, ongoing requests, updates of terms, updates of agreements, new responses, innovation projects with your suppliers. again, across every angle, we can help you to drive efficiency. Okay, looks like we've come towards the end of our time together. I'd like to thank everybody for joining. Like I said before, if you have any questions or if you want to have a call directly with me or any of the team here at Kodiak, then feel free to click the link on the screen in front of you now, and we'd love to speak with you. Alternatively, feel free to get in touch either on email or online, and again, our team will be here to respond as best we can. But for now, I'd like to thank you for your time and wish you the best rest of your day wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.